All right, AI. So let's just get down to the most important first fact. Raise your hand if you think you are an expert in artificial intelligence. He has a PhD in it. It's okay, don't be ashamed. It's like a ski run, the Black Diamond. Okay, who feels that they're like a intermediate in knowledge about AI? Okay, I would expect that of all of you. You know, I was at a conference where, you'll love this, Luke. I was at a conference once where somebody stood up and said, how many of you are developing games? And, you know, almost everybody in the room raised their hand. And then he said, okay, put your hand down if it's not a Web3 game. And AI is broadly part of Web3. And almost everybody's hands went down. Everybody's hands stayed up. And then he said, okay, keep your hand up if you were working on AI 6 months ago. All the hands went down. Hey, gentlemen. Awesome to see you. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to introduce himself, and we're going to also try to address a little bit in these first remarks how each of you kind of see AI and define it and whatnot. To some extent, over these next 30 minutes, let's address the question of, is the world going to be taken over by AI, or however it was worded? So let's start with you, Rick. How are you today?
Very good. I've not been in a room this magnificent since I had dinner at your house a month ago. So, very nice to be here.
Hey.
I'm Rick Allen. I'm the founding CEO of ViewLift. We are a streaming and monetization platform, principally for sports, leagues, and teams, also for entertainment companies, broadcast groups, etc.
Rick fails to tell you that he was one of the two most important men in the Clinton administration that brought back to America the belief that people should volunteer and take modest pay in order to help other people with education and social growth, and he's really a great American public servant, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Now for the gentleman with the PhD. He's much older than he looks. How are you today?
I am very well, thank you for asking. And I'm so glad to be here. This room is amazing, really amazing. As Mike was telling you, I'm a PhD in AI. I just got it a couple of months ago. And instead of going down the path of academic research, well, I could have, I decided to go with founding a company. And we specialize in basically digitizing everything that is verbally conveyed. So be they phone calls, virtual meetings, actual physical meetings, all of that can be captured and transcribed. Also, you can obviously use that information after the fact to query and know what happened in a project that you started 6 months ago. But, as I'm sure you know, this actually already happens in English. And since I'm Italian, I wanted to focus on different languages because English language is amazing. 4 billion people probably work with it every day, but other languages do not have the same privilege. So we are focusing on different languages, starting with Italian.
Ari, how are you today?
I am doing splendidly, thank you.
You're so much taller than you were on the Zoom.
I know. Sometimes people are shocked. I take a lot of space. So I'm Ari Jonsson. I have a PhD in AI from a little bit over a quarter of a century ago, when it was not cool, and people really asked me when I was doing the PhD, and what are you going to work on? Because this is not going anywhere. But I did end up working for NASA for 10 years, applying AI to spacecraft operations. Then I ended up at a university, running that for 12 years. And then I dove headlong into being an entrepreneurship and innovation. So I'm the chairman of the board for Identifier Technologies, among other things. And really thrilled to be here today in this room with all of you and all of you.
Great. Let's stay with you, Ari. Help me understand, what the heck is AI?
This has actually been one of the things that has been really hard to define properly. But the basic idea is to have computers be able to solve some of the same problems that we, as humans, are able to solve. So learning, making decisions, speaking, listening, understanding visual information, all of the things that we see as humans being really good at, we're trying to get machines to do the same thing. And this has been really challenging. And the real breakthrough that came through recently is through the machine learning algorithms that most of you have probably heard about. And it's essentially, we have figured out for a way for computers to learn complex concepts from the world, from visual information, from text, from all kinds of information. And then they can they can respond to questions about that information, and they can even now generate, whether it's pictures, images, videos, or text, based on all of this information they've learned. And this has really changed everything in terms of what AI can do, because now we can teach AI very complex things, and it can actually do it and it can interact with us. And this is a fantastic first step, but we're not completely done. So one of the things that we are missing, and is going to be the next step, is for AI to be able to make higher level decisions. The optimizing decisions, the tough decisions that we as humans are able to do. Once we have that with the ability to learn, AI will take over the world, guaranteed.
Excellent, excellent. Niccolo, how do you define AI? Would you also tell us a little bit about your more generalized paradigm for AI that you talked about with me recently?
Okay, so I would define AI in its current state as probably basically a pattern matching machine. As Ari was saying, they just learn from the data, and then they learn how to output stuff based on the data that they've been trained on. So in the current paradigm, I think the AI is a very useful tool indeed, but it will not be able to make decisions, like higher level decisions, because of how it actually works within. It's a very complex topic, as you can obviously understand. I will not go into the details here, but in a very general sense, they are not reasoning, well, we don't know whether they are reasoning, but we assume they are not. So what we have to do to get to AGI, so the general artificial intelligence, is probably have to change the paradigm, especially for generative models. Because right now, we predict the next word, and it's a bit more complex than that, but on the surface level, that's it. So where are we today? We are at a very, very interesting step, but we might not be on the right path to general artificial intelligence, in my opinion.
Thank you, very thoughtful. Rick, I know you've been speaking and thinking a lot about this issue over the last few years. Would you give us your version of a definition and maybe talk a little bit about the paradigm you've developed for looking at AI?
We've used machine intelligence for a long period of time, and everybody in this room has used it to have personalization features on Netflix, for example. Those are all coding sequences that you can, as a human being, if you identify a problem with the result, you can go back through the code to find out where it went sideways. The difficulty about AI is that those steps are not laid out and are not as capable of being deconstructed to find the error, because the point of AI is for the machine itself to move without being driven by human code. That leads to a series of risks, which I think we'll go into later. We see it as a business that operates in the technology sector with content owners to be an enormously valuable tool, which is exceptionally promising in terms of its ultimate destination, but as Niccolo said, at an early stage, still in its use. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill, and I think we'll talk about that in a moment.
As a matter of fact, right this moment, let's start with Niccolo. What are the pros? Tell me what's great about AI.
Okay, so everything that we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say, has been an amazing step forward in the field of AI, because AI has been around for 25, 30 years, but we didn't have the hardware capabilities to make them worthy of training a model and actually using it in inference. What's great about AI right now is that we are able to basically train models that solve specific tasks extremely well, extremely well. And we are at a point where solving these tasks is going to propel us forward. I don't know, I think this is an industrial revolution, basically. And I think that we are going to see a lot of stuff coming up in the next 2 to 3 years that is going to make it easy for communication to be had among different people in different languages, for example. I don't know, information is going to be much easier to gather, and it's just so much stuff that can go well, but there's also a lot of stuff that can go wrong, obviously.
And we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Can my AI, create my own talks and my own letters, and is this an advantage?
I mean, is that an advantage? That is an open question, I think, because at a certain point, yes, like AI will be able to create content based on what you are used to do. They are going to be personalized on your own experience and on your own beliefs and how you maybe create a talk, how you structure a talk. But are you really willing to give up the right, or actually the privilege of having to create your own talk? Do you want to do that? Because that might lead to some way of creative apathy. So it's an open question, I think.
Ari, you want to talk a little bit about how AI is going to help the world?
Yes. So it's actually really interesting, and it's probably a natural consequence, but it's really interesting in terms of how AI can help us. The fact that this is really coming into its own, the AI technology that we have today, following the information revolution. The fact that we have and we are gathering every day unbelievable amount of information, storing it, and I'll trust they will fix this.
This is machine learning.
This is machine learning. It's actually it's trying to edit me because I'm going to say something bad about it. So it's trying to censor me. So it comes in following the fact the advances of basically digital information technology. So we have unbelievable amounts of data that we can use to feed the AI, and that means it can do these kinds of things. It can create based on all of the data that we gathered over the last decades. And that is what is allowing AI today to learn how to drive cars, how to fly airplanes, how to operate machinery, how to write text, how to write talks, how to make videos, how to make images, and all of these things. But it's all being driven by data that we have created. Yeah. So one of the really interesting challenges that comes up is once AI starts creating a lot of the data that it puts out there, and then it's digesting the same data back as the input into it continuing to learn, it's actually been shown by a few researchers that this kind of a cycle, AI creating and learning from itself and then creating again, very quickly spirals down. So one of the things we have to figure out a way to do is to maintain the human creativity to continue producing really creative data for the AI to learn from. But if we continue to do that, then AI can do amazing things for us in terms of understanding the data and relating it back to us in a way that we can't do ourselves. It's just too much.
That's really the connection between the 2 points that you've made. This is a very sophisticated audience, but as you know, AI is taking large data sets and going over them at speeds and depths that human beings can't do. But to your question of does it actually generate unique insights that would be useful in a conversation, a speech, a piece of writing, that's really the big question, because it's studying what already exists. And therefore, I think on an individual basis, most of the folks I know who are using AI for writing and speaking are using it as a preliminary kind of survey of what's out there on the topic. And then they try to innovate on top of it. And the question is whether AI will truly start to do it on its own. We've seen what various creatives think can happen when it hits that stage. That's been a source of science fiction for many generations. How to keep it from spiraling down is a significant challenge, I think. I'd say to the two experts on this panel, that is already shown to be a significant concern.
Let me ask the audience, and I'm not going to have you close your eyes because I want you not to be affected by each other. I think this is a frank group. Who in this room is lightly worried or fears AI?
Oh, lightly worried, certainly.
And medium level of concern? Keep your hands up. And who's really freaked out about this stuff? Thank you, Kaya. Can we just take a minute or two on regulation? You know, I guess Marconi invented the radio, and I guess Sarnoff popularized the TV, though it now appears in the United States that these are mostly under the control of the federal government and regulation from our commissions. And we all know privacy regulation. That's why for the Americans here, every time you go on a website in Europe, they give you like 9 chances to say, no, don't take my data. They only give us like 1 chance in the United States. So I'm also wondering how regulation is going to develop in Europe. What do you see, we'll start with Rick, as the regulatory environment over the next couple of years?
Well, I'd focus first on what I think are the 3 biggest risks currently coming out of AI. The first is fraud in a variety of dimensions, projecting something that isn't true for the deliberate intent of deceiving people. And especially in the electoral context, that's a significant problem. We've seen it already from deep fakes to the way that pitches are designed in social media to try to impact elections. The second area I'd point to is jobs, the displacement of human beings out of jobs that have traditionally been handled by humans, which now will be capable of being done entirely by computers at a speed and a direction of which is difficult for governments to predict and therefore have the social net and retraining follow. And the third area is intellectual property, and it's one that I worry about a great deal, working as we do with the content communities. AI is driven by the study of big data models. That means that it is better to the extent that it can swallow up and analyze everything. But that then starts to take intellectual property in ways that sometimes can't be predicted, solved for, and saved. And that is an inherently dangerous and troublesome aspect. So I think you'll see governments start to regulate, to get back to your question, Mike, in all 3 of those areas. The problem is that government processes are maybe the antithesis of artificial intelligence. If you look at the United States, some may question if there's any intelligence behind the system at all. But they don't have the capacity to sort through actual data at high rates of speed. In fact, they're often bewildered by it entirely. And so regulation is chasing a man running down a hill and tends to be behind, and I think will always be behind. Without that mediating between what individuals and business can accomplish and what society needs to have to remain stable is the challenge of regulation. And I don't think anywhere in the world's figured it out yet.
Mm-hmm. How do you see the regulatory environment coming down, Niccolo? And give us a little bit of the EU perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you. You speak better English than I do.
I would say that the 3 points that Rick raised are extremely valid, but I think we're missing one key ingredient to the recipe, which is the big companies in the world are basically going to be an oligopoly of the AI space unless they are regulated in some way. So we really need to take into account that those kinds of companies can take over the entire AI space for the market. And to go back to the previous question, I think that this might also flatten a bit about the creativity of the people, because if everyone goes down using the same model, basically over the same 5 big AI models, they're going to have the same inherent biases, and If we use those data and we create stuff based on those models, those biases are going to be put into the world, and then those same, to go back to what Ari said, we are going to be spiraling down. So regulation has to be taken into account for the, like, how much leeway do you want to give companies to train models in a very, very wide different space. So I think that's one other thing that needs to be taken into account.
Ari, do you have any insight into how the European Union is going to be regulating this?
It's not really ready. They are, you know, they're running behind, just like every other government agency on the world. But they are starting to put down some basic principles, especially related to privacy and analysis of personal data. And some of it's following up as addition from the GDPR regulations that we have here. But another one where they are actually already taking steps and preparing legislation is, in addition to the companies and et cetera, is limiting the applications of AI where it affects human lives. And so the first thing that everybody thinks of when it comes to that is military applications of AI. Where do you put the limits there? But there are other applications. There are, you know, you can have AI in medical equipment. You can have AI in you know, all kinds of equipment that has directly to do with human lives, airplanes, cars, etc. So how do you set up the limitations so that the AI does not start accidentally or deliberately harming human beings? And just so to be absolutely clear, especially for those of you who are freaked out about this, I have no worry about Skynet or AI or anything like that taking over the world. But we as humans, we can still build AI into tools that impact human lives and human well-being very directly, and that needs to be addressed, and the EU is preparing the first steps in that direction.
Is there a country in Europe that you three, and we might say the United States, that you just think are outstanding in this area, really the leaders, universities and startups in certain countries?
In terms of being able to
develop
AI? Yeah. So it's actually happening all over the place. It's amazing. So the United States is kind of the leader in this. They're the ones who developed the first really neural networks, the machine learning, the ability to digest this massive data. Google was at the forefront of that for a while. Now we see that they're actually falling behind, as often happens. But we are seeing in Europe amazing AI talent in France, to a certain extent also in Germany. The Scandinavian countries are doing really interesting things. And then you have a lot of fantastic work being done in Eastern Europe. And maybe, you know, one place to mention is Estonia, where they really have, the government is also involved in helping AI develop, going to the extent of allowing automated deliveries of food and other packages, as well as having in restricted areas people movers that are completely autonomous. And so there are some astounding pockets in Europe as well where this is really at the forefront of AI development.
Apparently the United States, according to the New York Times, is the leader in AI and autonomous cars and people making love in the car, therefore. It's the New York Times. It's not an alternative fact. Okay, I'm sure we're kind of getting close to time, right? Gabriel, wherever you are. But maybe Niccolo would take a moment and tell us all how to play with AI. I mean, we all should be experimenting with it. How does a person with only a bachelor's degree, unlike your many advanced degrees, how do I play with AI? How do I learn to actually use it?
Okay, so I would say that there are a great number of tools that you can use to do a fairly wide variety of different tasks. One that comes to mind is, well, ChatGPT, obviously. There is Midjourney, which are basically just machines where you ask it to do something that it's trained to do, and it does. You don't need to do anything fancy. You don't need to download any models, train any code. It's just a human interface, and where the AI is really shining in this moment. being a human-computer interface that is really, really easy for everyone to use. So how can you play? Just look for what you like, search on Google or whatever is your search engine, your preferred search engine, for what you need to do, and any available tool on the internet, you're going to find something. And if there isn't, there is going to be in like 6 months.
Even LinkedIn posts, I notice, in the last few weeks have started to offer an AI alternative. I, of course, prefer my own writing. Okay, as we wrap up here, we'll start with Rick and go down the row. We thank you all for your time today. Look into the future. I won't make you close your eyes. Look, or click your heels. That's a, oh, you know that reference. Good for you. Where is this going? What's going to be happening in 10 years? I mean, give me a big prediction for 10 years from now for AI, Rick.
Well, in the first place, it'll get integrated into aspects of life that we don't anticipate. It's being utilized now to clip live sports events so that without human intervention, you can edit for highlights. I'm not sure that 3 years before that was developed, anybody saw that as a possibility. And sports isn't generally thought of as the most technologically sophisticated part of life. But I think that goes to the bigger prediction that every part of life will be impacted by these tools. And I would also predict that the difficulties that we anticipate will become more severe and mutate into areas that we also did not see coming. And so government will play catch up, I think, indefinitely, which then empowers large companies to act as decision makers and really start to drive this forward. So I think that too is part of the future.
Niccolo, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I will say that, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the talk, if there is not a paradigm shift in the way that we train these models, we are not going to be, in 10 years, we're not going to be closer to AGI than we are right now. We are going to have extremely valuable tools, but they're just going to be that tools. And I think that AI is not going to make us extinct more than we are. So we should be worried about ourselves first, and then maybe worry about AI.
So I'm going to make a couple of predictions related. First, I think AI in about 10 years plus is going to be integrated, as Rick mentioned, into almost everything we do. And it's going to be particularly well integrated into everything where their decisions are being made based on data. That's logistic, transportation, medical services, entertainment, just about every facet of life. Just about everything that we do is going to be influenced by AI optimizing, trying to help us do things as well as possible. So it's going to affect just about every job on the planet, every position that we have. And there are going to be a lot of changes. There are jobs that are essentially going to disappear. But, and here comes the second prediction, it's going to take a little bit of time. There's going to be a gap where governments have to step in and help us bridge the gap. But I'm not worried that there are going to be any fewer jobs after the AI revolution than before it. They're just going to be very, very different. And my hope, my sincere hope is that these will be jobs where we really can use our human capacity, creativity, communication, compassion, and all of these things. And then AI takes care of all the boring stuff.
Well, my AI says you guys have really helped us understand, and we thank you. And Gabriel, you want to take a couple questions? Okay. You can applaud. Let's give these guys a round of applause.
And we'll do one audience.
Okay, but that guy last year that asked like 5 questions, okay, you're not, in 5 years we'll let you ask another question.
He's moderating a panel, but
Well, then he can ask all the questions he wants. Yeah. Nicholas? Stand up if you don't mind.
Thank you. One of the things that's really interesting in the space that we're working, which is Web3, is everything about empowering content creators and how we can find ways that user-generated content can have value. This seems to be in conflict with what AI can do. It seems that suddenly me, that I'm not an artist, I can start sort of creating things which I couldn't before. How does AI help or sort of put at a disadvantage this new creator economy?
I think I can start answering that. I would say that you can use those tools to create content. That's definitely legit content that you have created with the help of an AI that has been trained on some data done by someone else. So, in a sense, you are, unless you were going through those data yourself, you kind of picked different things without knowing that you were, but you picked different things from different items in the data set the model was trained on. So you definitely did generate some content. It's hard to tell what the value of the content is going to be if everyone starts doing that. So I think that is my assessment.
We were talking last night about the storyboarding process, specifically in the development of games, but it's true in the development of films, television, etc. For someone who does not have the capacity to express themselves in drawing, and to be able to go through and very fastly, inexpensively, quickly test a variety of different approaches to a scene, to a portion of the journey in a game, AI will really help that process. I come from a creative family. I cannot draw a straight line. It would be impossible for me to actually execute a storyboard for a concept. With AI, those who are of diminished capacity, such as myself, will find that those inadequacies are made up for by the machine itself, and that'll help us, I think, spread creativity in that sense, in the same way that one can't be a professional athlete, most of us, but with help and data, the capacity of the human body is actually increased as well.
Ari, you want to take a last word?
I wholeheartedly agree with my esteemed colleagues here, and I think that we will see that for a little bit of time, there will be a flurry of AI-generated content that is going to, blank out and sort of overpower a lot of other creative processes, including the mixed initiative processes where AI and humans are actually working together, which I think has a fantastic future, as Rick mentioned. But we've seen it before in history, many, many times, where artistic expressions kind of get drowned out by copycats and things like that. We've seen it in the paintings, when they all started looking the same, and then somebody comes and revolutionizes it, whether it's Impressionism or something else. We will see the same thing here. We will see a time where it stagnates a bit, and then we will see the humans jump in again and take over. So don't worry in the long term.
Grazie mille.
Sì.
Thank
Prego.
you, everybody.
Right.